Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD Masterclass. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe. Hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon. We've made it through another week, the final week before Adobe Max. I am so excited for Max this year. I'm excited every year, but I think it's going to be a good one this year. It's online, it's free, it's going to be great. If you are tuning in live here on Behance, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Masayu, Web Donut, I love that username, Sergey, Jesse, and Wade, and Umacorn, and Cornell, Katrina. Who else do we have? Cody, Hasma. Great to see all of you. Yeah, definitely let me know where you're tuning in from and where you're going to be tuning in from next week at Adobe Max. Let's actually go ahead and hop over to my screen. Wade just posted a link in the chat, so you can get all the information about Adobe Max, max.adobe.com, or just click on Wade's link. It's coming up in like 4 days, October 26th to the 28th. Amazing. So soon. We have a lot of content. There's going to be updates across most, if not all, of our applications. Of course, XD is going to get a pretty nice update, and I can't wait to show all of you that stuff very soon. And I'm going to be hosting the What's New in Adobe XD session. We're going to be running it twice, once in the morning and once in the evening. So depending on what time zone you're in, or if you want to watch it twice, you can certainly do that as well. Jesse says, I maxed out my Adobe Max schedule. That's amazing. I see what you did there. Maxed. Very, very good. Drew says sneaks. And I'm just assuming, Drew, that you are referring to Kenan Thompson's sneaks that he's going to be giving away. It's probably not what you're referring to. But there they are. You can win sneaks, because he's going to be hosting sneaks. There you go. Yeah, I probably can't give away any sneaks. We're so close, Drew. We're 4 days away. Probably can't give away any sneaks just yet. It's not my job. It's not my department. Can't do it. But we're just a few days away. It'll be good. Now, before we jump into Adobe XD, some of you may have noticed or caught the news or watched the event that Apple released a new laptop. First of all, it's an amazing laptop. It looks incredibly fast and blah, blah, blah. It's got a notch. Now, I know we probably won't notice it most of the time, and we can put like a black strip on the wallpaper at the top, and it'll hide it, and in full screen view, it hides it anyway. It's there. So I figured we're going to have to design around it, sort of. So I put together this MacBook Pro mock-up. You can download on dribble.com/Pinsky, I think it is. I don't even know my username over there. Yeah, you can download that and have fun. It's all vector, so if you need to design with a MacBook Pro, there it is. Alrighty, here we go. Wade says, #no notch, please. And by the way, if my microphone is too loud, let me know in the chat, because it looks like it's spiking a little bit. So let me know. I'll take a look in a few seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and hop over to Adobe XD. Here we go. Why does it have to be so large? Umacorn, are you referring to the size of the notch or the thickness of the computer? Because that got a lot thicker. But it needs room for thermals and the new chips and all that fun stuff. The notch, I don't know. Wish I knew those answers. All right, audio sounds fine. Perfect. Okay, so here we are in XD, and this is going to be most likely the last masterclass covering this gaming design. We've been at this for a few weeks, and we started by building out the home screen. We took it very slow. And by the way, if you do want to watch a few videos on how that's done, I do have a few on YouTube. I am working on the third one, so that is coming, but you can do that as well. So, Tim's peeking a tiny bit when you're yelling. Thank you. Tim is always on it. Hold on. There we go. That should be a bit better. Tim is always on my audio. Anytime there's something wrong, he's on me on Slack. Not in a rude way. He does it because we want the best possible quality out there. So Tim, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so yeah, we started the process on this guy here. Then we moved on to our loading screen and our sign-in screen. We used components and stacks and all sorts of things. And then we went on to build out the community screen, with more stacks and scroll groups, and we built stories because of course we did. And maybe if we have time today, someone send him a limiter. I should get something. Well, I don't know. I think I have something turned on. I don't know. If we have time today, we can actually build out like a stories experience aside from the, usernames at the top. And then last week, we actually covered a lot last week. We built out this library page. And what was cool about this, if you missed it, definitely go back and watch it. We used the Google Sheets plugin to build this out. So we just basically created these shapes, and then the Google Sheets plugin brought everything else in, which is super cool. So if you missed that, go ahead and do that. I also have a video on Google Sheets on YouTube as well. And then we very quickly built out this page. We did rush it a little bit, but yeah, looks pretty cool. All right, so today we're gonna be pivoting a little bit, and we're gonna be tackling a mobile design based on a lot of this information and experience. So I'm gonna grab my artboard tool, shortcut key A, and over to the side here, when you have that tool selected, you're gonna notice a lot of presets. Eventually we'll have the iPhone 13 presets in there, and I don't know if the new MacBook Pro has a different, probably doesn't, but yeah. So eventually iPhone 13 will be there. Let's go ahead and do iPhone 12 Pro Max, not much different than the iPhone 13s anyway. And we're gonna pop this right about here, and we're gonna get going. So this is going to be most likely the maybe the browse page, and we're going to be building out something similar to maybe an app store. You have app stores on your iPhone and your Android devices and that sort of thing. So we're going to be building something else like that. Chris says Google Sheets is amazing. It is, isn't it? I don't like spreadsheets, but as long as someone does the work for me and then gives me the Google Sheet, magic. All right. So now we did go with more of like a darker tone to this experience, and we can certainly mix it up and go light if we wanted to, but so we remain consistent. I can select this artboard, copy to my clipboard, and then if I select this artboard here, I can actually paste the appearance. That's going to take whatever fill is on the artboard that I copied from and pop it into this artboard here. Now, of course, I can use my document assets and save colors and that sort of thing, but whatever works, whatever is easier to grab. All right. Now, starting off at the top, we're going to just go top to bottom. We may want right up here a few icons, possibly a header. So let's start with the header because that's probably the easiest. Shortcut key T, boop, click. And this might be maybe just games. We'll keep it simple, right? I'm going to bump this up in weight a little bit. Probably want to bump it up in size. And I know some of you are sick of me talking about this, but I love this tip because it helps me so much. It saves me a ton of time. If you're like me and you design very zoomed in, like this, sometimes I'm like almost at pixel level. You lose perspective of how things are looking. Are things lined up properly? Are they scaled properly? You just go ahead and hit the play button at the top just to launch the preview. Very small. See, it looks good. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here, right? It looks fine for the most part when you're designing zoomed in, but then you take a look at the preview and it definitely looks a little bit small, right? So I'm going to bump this up a little bit. And if you want, you can also have the preview open while you're designing. You have another monitor or you want to put it over here. It will remain on top, which is great. We'll stick with 18. We'll see what that looks like. All right. We're talking about the size. Oh yeah, Umacorn. I don't know if you I missed it. If you clarified if it was the notch or the size. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a 14-inch and a 16-inch. I did order the 14 because I have a 13 now. I love that size. I feel like a 16 would be a little bit too large. All right, now another thing you have to keep in mind. Speaking of notches, that was a great segue. Speaking of notches, when you're designing for an iPhone or some other devices, at the top, there's about 45 pixels, somewhere like right about, I don't know, right about here. There is the lovely notch on all of our phones, many of our phones. So keep that in mind. You don't want to put anything too close. You definitely don't want to put anything up above there. It's going to be hidden. You won't be able to see it. So keep that in mind. All right. Beautiful. Now over to the left and the right, we may want a few icons, maybe an icon to go back, and maybe you have a messaging experience. You might want an icon to, let you know if you have messages. Why was Scrubby not added to XD like Illustrator? That's a good question. Definitely go to adobext.uservoice.com, upvote that. I don't know the exact reason. We do have a bunch of ways to zoom, including holding down Command and using a scroll wheel, or Command spacebar, and then you can, do. This is probably what you're talking about, the Command spacebar, and then, yeah. I would love to see Scrubby zoom, but yeah, definitely upvote it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hop over to Nucleo. Boop. It's a third-party icon manager. I have a bunch of icons in here already. If you don't have icons, I'm going to show you how to get some icons in just a moment. But I'm going to type out something like arrow. And I'll grab this guy here. And then maybe something like chat. No, message. I always forget. There it is. I always forget which icon, what it's tagged as. All right, so I've got my 2 icons in here. And I'll also note, let me put these, let me actually drag out some guides. Let's go about, I don't know, 32 maybe? That might be too much on the side. Probably too much. Let's try about 24, sticking with that 8-pixel grid. I'll snap this over. I'll snap this one over. And those are definitely way too small, right? Again, when you're designing zoomed in, things look better than they actually are. That's a bit better. Now, what I was going to mention is typically, if you are paying attention to guidelines and sizing and things like that, icon or hotspots, I don't want to say icons because it doesn't have to be true. The hotspots that you're designing for should be about 45 pixels, anywhere between like 42 and 45 pixels. Now, in this case, this messaging icon, it's currently 26 pixels, right? Wide and high. If I were to actually make that like 45 pixel, right about there, way too big. So don't do that. If you do need smaller icons, and in many cases you will, especially for icons like this and on navigation bar, what you should probably do is just add like a 45 pixel or 42, whatever it might be, square behind your icons. I'll just pop it in this group behind there, and I'm just going to drop the opacity to 0. That way, that entire area is now a hotspot, right? So if you are testing it on a mobile device or handing it off for development or whatever it might be, it's very clear, and it's a lot easier to tap on than it was when this hotspot was not there. So definitely keep that in mind. All right, let's see. More talk about the notches and the MacBook Pros. Cornell's asking about monitors. Do you need a 4K if you already have 2 full HDs? I don't know, is that for me or is that for someone? I can't pay attention to the chat too much. But if that's for me, let me know. I do have some 2 4K monitors beside me, but you certainly don't need 4K monitors if that question is for me. Anyways, all right, so we have our header, we have our back button, we have our messages. Now we may also want just maybe a little badge just to indicate, do you have any messages, right? So with my ellipse tool, I'll draw one out, and I might want this to be the standard, well, I was gonna say standard red for notifications, but you could honestly do whatever works, right? But red is typically standard. And because we're working on a darker experience, you typically want to pull the saturation out of your very bright colors. Otherwise, it's a little bit hard on the eyes, so just bring out the saturation a touch. And I'm going to add a bit of a border around here. I might sample the background color, just so it looks like there's a bit of a knockout in this messages icon. Now, of course, there are many ways to do that. You can also create an actual subtraction Boolean object, but this way works as well. All right. More monitor talk, more MacBook Pro talk. All right. Y'all are having fun. Also going to make sure to pop that into the group. All right. So now that we have our header complete, I'm going to make sure to group this information, call this header, and then we're going to start moving down the artboard. And I'm thinking right here, we might want a featured section that showcases 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, who knows? Could be a carousel of some sort. We'll see. So I want to start off with another header, right? And it's going to be very similar to this one at the top, which I might want to actually bump up in weight a little bit, just to give it a little bit of style. That looks kind of fun. And I'm going to copy that to my clipboard just so I have the style there, because I'm going to, if I did create something in between, then the style might get lost. But it should be, yeah, should be good right now. So if I needed to, I can always right click and then paste appearance to paste the style of this text layer at the top. Or again, like I mentioned earlier, if you have your assets saved in your document assets, you can do that as well. Hey Jack, great to see you. Hey Steven. And yeah, great to see everyone. If anyone is joining, just, let me know in the chat. Love to say hi. I might want to make this a little bit smaller. And then right underneath this, we may want to showcase the image of this particular game. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, shortcut key R, drag one across, and you're noticing our smart guides are helping us out. Now, because I created that hotspot up here, it's kind of throwing off the smart guides a little bit. So I do have my regular guides set up, so I'm going to just bring those up, Command and Control apostrophe, and snap that into place. I might want to round out the corners just a little bit. We have been using rounded corners throughout our experience, so I'm going to make sure to keep that consistent. All right, there we go. Squircles. I probably wouldn't use a squircle on a mobile design. I mean, this is kind of like this is kind of like a squircle up here, but for larger shapes like this, I probably wouldn't. Desktop possibly, and then things like widgets, I would definitely use a squircle. All right. Jane says, I have no interest building anything in XD at the moment, but listening to Howard is good for my soul tonight. I appreciate that, Jane. And maybe one day you'll venture into XD and you can create all sorts of things in XD, including, if you're into Squid Game, you can create your own Squid Game card in XD, or a gradiented card. New tutorials on YouTube. Anyways, shameless self-promotion. So we've got our card here at the top, and I might want to bring in an image. So I do have a bunch of images here, and let's see. Which image do we want to bring in? Now I'm trying to think this through a little bit. What we might want to happen, I think we'll have time for this, is when a user taps on this image at the top, it's going to expand, and it's going to show more information about this particular game. We have to kind of think that through. What do we want to actually have expand? So maybe something like, I mean, this one looks kind of cool. It's very dark, very gloomy, but that could work. So we'll start with that. We'll see how that goes. All words are made up. It's true. Very true. I'm going to add a bit of a border. Drop that in opacity a little bit so it's nice and subtle, somewhere around 10%, looks pretty good. Now, what you might be noticing is at the top left-hand corner of this container, there's a link icon. And the link icon, if anyone is wondering, is Toy Face. I saw yes, Drew says Toy Face. You're probably referring to the Toy Face I created in XD I'll talk about that in a minute. I dragged this image in from my Creative Cloud library, so it came in as linked. And what's cool about this is if it was created in Illustrator or Photoshop or wherever it might have been created, it's still linked back to the original. So if I edited it, that's a strange word, edited it, edit. If I made changes to it back in the application it was created in, those changes would automatically get pushed back to this linked asset. Now, of course, if I didn't want that to happen, I can right click and unlink graphic, just like that. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Someone says, Howard, you're a great teacher. I've learned a lot of things from you. Appreciate that. Now, very quickly, just because Drew mentioned it, where did I upload the, I think it was on Twitter. No, there we go. I did recreate my Toy Face in Adobe XD. That's the animated one. There we go. So I commissioned Amrit a while back to create a Toy Face for me, and I thought it would be kind of fun. I was bored a few nights ago. I redesigned this completely using Adobe XD. All the layers are over there. Well, groups and layers. I couldn't fit everything in there. But yeah, all created in XD. It was a very fun project. I would definitely recommend that if you all have time, don't necessarily create that, but anything that you think might challenge you, something that maybe XD isn't made to do, It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot in the process. You pick up a lot of tips and tricks along the way. All right. So we've got this up here, and what we might want to do is, just so users know exactly what this is, we may want to put a title and maybe a very brief description, right? So what I'm going to do is illustrating in Audition. I mean, there is a healing brush or a content-aware healing brush in Audition. You probably could do it. Tim, that is your challenge. All right. So we may want to put the title, maybe a little bit of a header or something like that. So let's see. Maybe we'll put something like Hotel Mysteries. It makes it a little bit larger. And we can pop it at the bottom. We can pop it at the top. There's so many different places we can put it. And then maybe right above, we may want to put, there's always categories of applications, especially featured applications, right? So something like, indulge your inner detective. Does that make sense? I don't know. I just made it up now. I'm going to make sure to capitalize everything. Definitely want this quite a bit smaller. Now, what could be kind of fun is if I made that E, this might be too small. May also, let's see, 5.7. Ooh, close. 5.8. Not bad. What I was trying to do is make that E line up with the T. It's definitely not necessary, but it just makes me happy, right? Now this one doesn't line up. Anyways, we're going to ignore it. I'll drop the opacity a little bit. I might want to drop the weight as well, touch. Now it doesn't line up. All right, I'm going to go back up. No power. Oh no, Ryan, where'd your power go? Oh, hopefully you can get it back, especially by Max on Tuesday. You won't want to miss that. All right, so we've got our card here at the top, and we're going to get to adding the additional information inside the card in a few moments. But one thing I'll mention is if you did have an image like this one, right? Bad example. Maybe this one? Yeah, okay. This is a good one. If you did have an image like this, right, and you had some text that you want to put on top of it, there really isn't a good spot for this. And if you changed it to, let's say, black or dark gray or whatever it might be, it's a little better. That actually looks not bad. I would probably stick with that. But if you needed it at the bottom for whatever reason, an overlay helps quite a bit. So it's as easy as, grabbing a rectangle, drawing one out, making sure it's behind the text. You're not going to be able to see it just yet because it's white on white. But go ahead and just set a linear gradient, both colors at black, but the top color just drop down to 0% opacity, right? Then when you do move it behind the text layers, it's a lot easier to see. Now, typically, you wouldn't have the bottom color at 100% as well. So you can drop the opacity of the overall overlay, and even setting it at something like 40% off on. It just does so much to improve accessibility and readability. So if you do have an image that's very busy, then definitely keep that in mind. All right, so now down here, we may want some additional information. Let's go ahead and duplicate this header. About 24. I'm going to also make sure to group some of this. Featured. And pop this header in there as well. This might be new this week. All right, that could do. And then for this section here, I'm thinking we might want maybe 4 games, maybe 2 going across and then 2 down. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to drag out a rectangle. I'm going to snap it to the center. Now, of course, I don't want it to stay in the center, because if I did that, then they would kind of be right on top of each other. So I'm just going to subtract about maybe 8 pixels or so. That way, when I do snap it over here, we have a nice amount of padding in between. Now, it depends on how much padding you want, right? In this case, 16 might be a bit too much, so I might want to go like -4, which will give us 8 pixels in between, which should work, right? All right. Now, to match if I do want it square, right, I can match the height, 187. It's a terrible number, by the way. Probably don't want to go like 187, but we're going to run with it for now. And then we're going to round out the corners a little bit. Let's try about 8, see what that looks like. And then right down below, we're going to want our title of the game and maybe the developer or some other information. So text tool, one more time, shortcut key T, title of game. Now up here we were using about 16 for the size. If we were to stick with 16 here, it's not going to work. One, because it'll get confused with the header right up here, right? And two, it's a little bit too large. And if we have a title that's, longer than maybe 3 or 4 words, it might get cut off or go bump down to the second line, which you may not want, right? So I'm going to bump this down maybe a little bit. You don't want to go too small. And then I'm going to bump down the weight as well, just a touch. And that looks a little bit better. And then I'm going to duplicate this downwards, and this is going to be either the description or maybe the game developer. Now, because this is secondary information, I'm going to bump this down a little bit more and weight as well. I can also bump down the color or opacity just a touch. That could work. Just to create a little bit of hierarchy in there. Cornell is saying, will I be able to watch Adobe Max streams after the event? Yes, I believe the majority of the streams or segments will be available after the event. I know last year there were a few that were not because of licensing or copyright or contract issues, usually with like bigger celebrities. I don't know if that's the case this year, but at least all the sessions, you'll be able to watch them, right? So that'll be fun. I definitely went back last year and watched a bunch of them afterwards because during the event, I was all over the place. And I was hosting a live thing last year, so it was nice to kind of go back and just sit down at night and just watch some cool stuff take place. All right, so we have our card looking pretty good. That'll do. And now we can use either stacks or repeat grids or a lot of different things. Because we're going to be having maybe 2 going across and then 2 down, or even maybe more down, I think a repeat grid will probably be a good option for this. So selecting all of this information here, right at the top, repeat grid, and boop, there we go. And now I can bring out this to add another one, and I'll bring this down like that. Possible that there's not enough spacing here, but let's run with it for now. We'll see how things are looking a little bit later on. We're also going to be adding a navigation bar down here at the bottom. Oh, thank you, Tim. Yeah, apart from the Luminary speaker events. Okay, so I think it's the same as last year. All right. So we have our cells in place, and these are going to house all of our games. And what we can do is we can actually go to a Creative Cloud library, or we can go to Finder, Windows Explorer. Is this still called Windows Explorer? I think it's just called Explorer now. And we can grab some images. So I'm going to grab 1 and 2, 3, and 4. And I'll just drag all 4 of those directly into the grids. There we go. And like I mentioned, I showed, I think it was last week possibly, you can also use text files on your computer. So TXT files, if you have those files with a list of games or a list of developers or whatever it might be, drag those directly onto the individual text layers, and it's going to propagate throughout the grid. Or you can use the Google Sheets plugin. That looks pretty good. I still think, yeah. But this is the nice thing about repeat grids, right? Gutter is needed to be bumped. So I think here there's just not enough spacing in between these elements here. And nice thing about repeat grids is I can just bring this in, and it's going to automatically make those changes to all of them, right? Okay, so I think originally I had 16, and I think that's what I should go for. That looks a lot better. All right, now I'm not going to go through and name all of these games and developers. I do want to get to some other things, including the expandable card, but let's go ahead and very quickly create the navigation bar down at the bottom. So with the rectangle tool, I'm going to draw one out. Now, going along the same lines as our lovely notch friend at the top, at the very bottom, there is the home indicator. Thankfully, that is not on the new MacBook Pros, but the home indicator is that little bar at the bottom that you swipe up to get back to your home screen. Now, it doesn't take nearly as much space as the notch at the top. It's something like a bit thinner than that, or shorter than that, something like that. And it's right towards the bottom here. So it'll take up about, somewhere about 24 pixels down there, maybe a little bit less too, right? So you want to make sure that if you have any elements down at the bottom of your application that you need a user to interact with, you don't want to put it below basically the bottom, let's say 30 pixels, right? Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for your users to actually interact with those elements. All right, so we have our navigation bar. And again, because we're going for a darker feel, let's go for a darker navigation bar. Now, we could do the same color as the background. It might get a little bit lost. So we can also bump it up a little bit, add a bit of blue in here. And if we want to get fancy, we love getting fancy here, right? We can add a background blur. Right down here at the bottom, boop, I missed it. Take two, boop, there we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and bump the blur up basically all the way, just so that, if it's too low, then the icons and text on top of this navigation bar will be a little bit hard to read. Bump it up all the way. I'm going to keep the brightness at 0 for now. But you're noticing, possibly, the blue that we added in a few moments ago is kind of lost, right? And Cornell's saying, I was waiting for the background blur. It wouldn't be a masterclass with a background blur, right? So down right at the bottom, we have our blur amount, we have our brightness, and then we have our effect opacity. And this is what's going to allow the fill color or fill image, whatever is inside the fill, to come back in. So as I'm increasing this, you're noticing that the blue is coming on back, just like that. And if you had a texture in this, like a noise texture or something like that, wouldn't make sense for this too much, but that'll also start to come back in as well. So it's a nice subtle effect. And what you're going to notice as I'm moving these images around, that blur is updating really nicely. All right, now on top of here, we're going to want probably a few icons. So let me go ahead and hop back over to Nucleo, Home, copy this, pop it into place, and maybe something like a grid. This could be maybe, it wasn't grid I'm looking for, it was the little dots. What is this called? A menu, okay. But it's kind of like a grid, and this might be where our games are going to be housed. Maybe we want maybe a tab for highlights. So if you're playing a game and you take a highlight, or you save one on your computer or something like that, you can, pop into here. I know I have the icon here. I always lose it. I always look for this specific icon. There it is. That's the one. And then finally, we're going to have maybe just users, right? This could be our friends list or something. Now, in general, when you're designing a navigation bar for a device like this, typically want anywhere between 4 and 5 icons. 3 looks a little bit strange, and then more than 5 just looks very crowded. So 4 to 5 is usually a pretty good sweet spot. And in terms of the size, let me actually first change these to white. Yeah, those are way too small. So what we can do is maybe bump up. Let's go for, try 24. Whoops. Our users lost their heads. Now, because this is these are vector-based icons, responsive resize does affect them. So I'm going to turn that off. Let's try that again. That's a bit better. I might want to bump that up a little bit more. 26. That could do. All right. And now we do have a lot of space. Now, of course, we can bring these in a little bit if we needed to. And if you take a look, if we line these up, yeah, it looks a little strange. So what I would either do is bring them all in, turn responsive resize back on, bring them all in like this, even though they don't line up with the guides on the left and the right, totally fine, right? Still looks completely great. It would look a lot better. It looks a lot better than this does, right? So sometimes it's okay to break those guides and break the bounds if it just ends up looking better and leads to a better user experience. Another thing we can do is we can add another icon. So maybe on this experience, there's a way to add something. So I might want to maybe create a nice large circle or ellipse. And this one, what color should we make it? I feel if we go too vibrant, it might look strange. Also clashes with the shape in the background. We could add a bit of a border, maybe on the outside, maybe drop the opacity, all sorts of different things we can do. I don't like that color completely. Yellow is interesting, but it's very in your face. You probably don't want to go red. Okay, we'll stick with blue for now. And then we can maybe add an add button, right? So you can do that with an icon. And by the way, I forgot to show you all, you probably all know anyway, but there is a plugin called Icons for Design. So if you don't have icons of your own, you can definitely go there. I'll show you that in just a moment. This time for real. All right, so hopping into our plugins down at the bottom left-hand corner, there is the Icons for Design plugin right here. Now, if you don't have any icons or if you don't have any plugins or this one in particular, there's a plus button right here at the top, search for Icons for Design, and you can basically search for anything you need. And all these icons are open source, so you can use them in your projects as you wish. Tim says no hot pink, probably not. It might not work. It's a nice color, but it may not work. Probably not. All right, let's see. There's one stream from 2020 I'd love to see again, but they quietly made it go. Oh, you're, the Arrow one from Adobe Max, yeah. Some of them, I guess, were, I don't know, taken away for some, or I don't know if all of them are gone now, but I haven't looked. All right, so now we have this additional button up here. If we do bring those to the edges and select them all and then align them, it looks better, right? I would probably still bring these in a little bit more, just so they're not too close to the edges of the device, which still looks a little bit strange, but I think that could work. All right. So we've gone through and created our card at the top, which we're going to fill in just a moment. We have our new section and we have our navigation bar at the bottom, which I'm going to make sure to group. And if we are going to be using this on multiple screens, which we probably will, it's a good idea to create a component. So right here in the Properties Inspector, boop, there we go. Also Command and Control K will do the same thing as well. Now, one thing I didn't get to, and I probably won't in this stream, but I do want to get to that card at the top, that's kind of fun, is the active versus inactive icons. Are they line-based? Are they different colors? Do we add text at the bottom? That sort of thing, right? But we can get to that another time. So let's go ahead and fill this in. So what our idea for this is, when a user taps on this particular card, it's going to expand to fill out the entire device, so top to bottom, and it's also going to have additional information. So what we can do here is right on top of this, or on another artboard, doesn't really matter, we can start adding in that information. So let's go ahead and add a rectangle, because there might be this area when it expands, the image will be at the top, and then there'll be a rectangle down at the bottom that houses, the text and the buttons and that sort of thing. Now, we probably don't want something too bright. Now, it could be kind of fun to pull in some colors from the image up here. So if I select something like maybe this brownish orange, auburn possibly, do something like that. You might want to see a little bit of the information in the background. Could be kind of fun, right? Possibly. Sometimes it could be distracting, but we'll see. And looking at it now, it's probably not going to work. But something like that could look a lot better, right? Much better. I can also drop the brightness a little bit. All right. And then on top of this, we might want a few things. One, we might want an icon, and this might be different than the actual screenshot right up here. Maybe I'll round out the corners a little bit. 8. Let's go a bit more stylistic. Let's try, I think 16 might be too much, although it's not too bad. And then I don't know if I have another, let's see. I don't think I have another image that has like a hotel, but I guess we'll use this one for now. Not exactly the same, but it'll work. And I'm gonna add another little subtle. Oh, my dog is actually eating. There we go. He hasn't eaten in like 3 days. My wife and daughter are out of town, and whenever they go out of town, he gets super depressed, and he just goes on a hunger strike. It's normal for dogs, apparently, but he's just eating. All right. Now, we may also want the title over here. Now, there are a few ways we can do this. If we wanted it a little bit different, maybe different, different style or different wording or whatever it might be, then we can just type one here. Or if we wanted the same thing as, Hotel Mysteries, we can actually just move that down here. Now, of course, we'd have to make sure that this container is, let's see where, right here. Move this up to the top. I don't know if you can you probably can't hear the munching in the background, but there's a lot of food eating going on back there. All right, so we could just move this over here if we wanted to, but let's get a little bit stylistic with it. Let's go ahead and type out, let's actually type out the same thing, right? Hotel. Tim says, I wish people would be excited when I eat something. You know what, Tim? I'm gonna be excited when you eat something. There we go. Now I do have a few typefaces on my system that I purchased from UI 8. And this one in particular is not available on Adobe Fonts, but there probably is something sort of similar. But I think it kind of be fun to, have a very stylistic typeface at the top. So something like this, now that's a little bit difficult to read, but if I duplicate it and do maybe regular, I can kind of offset it a little bit to have a nice, interesting design. Something like that. I don't know if I love it, but we'll try. And I can also experiment. We've got some interesting colors up here in this image, particularly these lighter yellows. And then we have some browns, which you can possibly use for the, maybe. It's a little bit thin. I can also add a bit of a border on this, just to thicken that up a little bit, maybe 0.5. It kind of has an interesting feel to it, doesn't it? There we go. Now, I was also experimenting with another typeface earlier. Which one was it? Was it Brotherhood? Yeah, this is interesting. It was kind of like a, script typeface. There's also, these are also from UI 8, by the way. Leviathan, and then they have a normal one. I want all of your help. Which one do all of you like better? Top or bottom? Both of them are interesting. I don't know if they'll necessarily go with the theme of this Hotel Mysteries type thing, but yeah, top or bottom, let me know. Let's see. Hamza is asking, how can I make a button? Oh, so a long click, I think you're talking about. So XD doesn't support long taps or long clicks or anything like that at the moment. Hopefully it will at some point in the future, but definitely something to upvote on user voice. Top, top, top. Ooh, okay. There we go. Oh, Megan says bottom. Tim says top. All right, I think we're gonna go top for now. I don't know what color to make. I kind of want it overlapping, but then, I've got light and I've got dark. There probably isn't a good color that will work here. Probably not. All right, we'll leave it here for now. I'll move this one over here. I do like that typeface, but yeah. All right, Hotel Mysteries. Where do I put that? Maybe I'll just center it. There we go. And then maybe down here at the bottom, we may want a little bit of a description about this particular game. So with the text tool, I'm going to drag one out to define the width. Now, obviously, we certainly don't want to do something like this for the description, right? Hard to read. It's got to be smaller. So we're going to go back to something like Museo Sans, which is what we were using previously for most of the other text layers. And let's try something like 14. That could work. Maybe I'll bump it up in weight a little bit. What kind of monitor to use with the new MacBook Pro? You know, I'm using right now 2 LG 4K monitors. I'll probably stick with those, but that's a good question. I don't know if there's a certain kind we should all be using when we get our MacBooks. I don't know. We'll see. All right, I'm not very clever right now. I don't have much of a description, but I am going to center it, and I'm going to bump up the line height a little bit, just so it's a little bit easier to read. And it does look I don't know. It's hard to tell. And it's always a good idea if you can plug your iPhone into your computer and just kind of preview it on an actual device. It helps tremendously. Like this helps a little bit, but it definitely helps to have a real device. I think it might be too big. Angelina is saying I bought the 16-inch. So I got the 14, and I think because I have a 13 now, I think a 16 would be a little bit too much. Let's see. Dive into some murder mysteries and try to... There we go. And it's usually a good idea to put actual copy into these descriptions and text layers, just so it feels a little bit more real. And then down here at the bottom, we may want a nice button to actually download the game, right? And these buttons could be in so many different forms, right? They could be rounded, they could be sharp corners, they could be border based, like this, right? They could be strictly icon based. But we'll do this for now because I do want to very quickly get to the actual prototyping of this. So this isn't, terribly nice looking. It definitely could be nicer. But what I want to do is show you all how to... Yeah, there's so much space down. Let me make this larger. Hold on. It's going to bother me. Make that bigger. Description. Wish I had more of a description in there. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger just so I can fill out some space. Something like that. We've got our download button, which isn't looking that great. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to bump up the weight because this is a primary call to action. Round these corners out a little bit more. All right. Yeah, I'm not loving it, but let's wire this up. So what we can do is we can either use a separate artboard or we can use a component and states. Now I prefer components and states because, condenses everything onto one artboard, allows you to interact with everything in no particular order on any given artboard. So we're going to do that. Let me make this icon a little bit bigger. All right. And what we want to do is take everything that's going to be part of this card and place it all... Ooh, can you add screenshots of the game at the bottom? That's a good idea. We'll get to that. I want to put everything into a component. Now, before I do that, we don't obviously want all of this information at the bottom displayed. So what we want to do is create a mask. Now, initially, we're going to only want what's inside of this card to be displayed. So I'm going to duplicate this shape, Command and Control D, make sure it's at the very top of this layer stack. And what I want to do is use this shape to mask everything else, right? Now, we're going to run into a problem. I'm going to do this on purpose. I'm going to select all this information in the layers, right? And then under the object menu, I can't mask with shape. Why is that, you might be asking? It's a good question. It's because this shape technically is already a mask because there's an image inside of it, right? And you can double click and you can adjust that mask and the image inside of it, right? So all I'm going to do is just choose any color, it'll get rid of that image. And now if I do the exact same thing, mask with shape. So it's going to show me only objects that are inside of that shape that I used as a mask. Now, because some of them were kind of poking in, some of them are still visible. Now we may want to move some of these down. And maybe we'll space them out a little bit more so that when they kind of come on in, there's this fun little effect going on. Oops, I missed it. Where did it go? Where's the download button? There we go. All right. Very good. And we also have this container poking up a little bit, so I'm going to just shift that down. There we go. All right. I'm going to move this over as well. Perfect. So our initial state is complete, but we haven't created that component just yet. So with the entire group selected, or you can select the entire mask if you want, I'm going to press the plus button over. I also realized that I lost the featured. There we go. Mask. Put that up. Move this down to the bottom. All right. So what we're going to do now is create a component right here at the top right-hand corner. And because we've already done the work to create our initial state, what it's going to look like at the very beginning, we're going to press the plus button one more time, and we're going to create we can create a new state. We can also create a toggle state, possibly. But because there'll be elements that we might want to interact with inside of this, we'll create a regular new state, and we'll call this expanded. And now we can go ahead and start designing what it's going to look like when it does expand. Now, you could have done this backwards, too. You could have had the default state be the expanded state and then created the collapsed state if you wanted to do it that way. Totally fine. But what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure to expand the mask so that it covers just about everything. Pull that down here. There we go. And then we're going to start moving things into place. I might want to move this up a little bit. I'm going to expand this image so it takes up the entire... There we go. I'm going to unround out those corners. Now, I think we decided earlier that we probably don't want this to be visible. Now, we could, pop it up here somewhere, or we can just move it down. Now, currently, this shape is below, right? What we might want to happen is actually have this shape above, right? Now, what you'll want to do in this case is actually make sure that that change happens on the default state, so you don't have any weird issues when transitioning. Move that up a little bit. We'll grab our text, move that up, description, and then our download button right about there. All right. Now I'd probably add some additional information here, maybe, some icons to go back or something on top of this, right? I might also want to move maybe some of this even further up, just so we have a bit more room for all this information down here at the bottom. Because like, I think it was Cornell was mentioning, we can add some screenshots down there. But we are running out of time. So I'm going to go back to our default state. From prototype mode, we're going to select this entire thing because, we can tap on the whole thing if we want to. We're going to click on the blue handle to the right. And then inside the properties inspector, we can choose our expanded destination. We want to make sure that we choose auto animate so that it actually animates. Ease in and out, maybe 0.6 seconds possibly. We can also maybe do a snap. That could be fun. And now when we press play, fancy, right? Now what's cool is because we're working in the component very quickly, we can dive into our default state. And then, down here at the bottom, down here at the bottom, like was suggested, we can put an area that will display maybe some screenshots. Just like that. We'll just do some blank boxes for now. And what you're going to notice is that propagated to our expanded state, which is great. Now, I should have planned this out a little bit better, but that's okay. And now, one more time, there they are. It's ugly down there, but it works, and you hopefully understand how that was done. All right, that is going to wrap it up for today. Adobe Max in 4 days. Definitely stay tuned for that. Register for my session, register for all the sessions, and stick around. We've got Kyle T. Webster coming up in just a few minutes. Can't wait to show you all the new goodies that we're going to be shipping in just a few days. Stay tuned, and I'll see you all next time.